tonight, it's debate time. We're live in Houston as the candidates take the stage for round 3 of the Democratic presidential primary contest. Still recovering 2 years after Hurricane Harvey devastated the city, what residents still rebuilding want to hear from the candidates. Then, turning Texas blue, the chairman of the Democratic Party joins us to discuss his party's push to end decades of Republican rule. Capitol Tonight's live coverage from Houston starts right now. Here on Capitol Tonight, I'm Karina Kling, and we are live here in Houston, where right now 10 candidates are taking the stage just blocks away from here for the third Democratic primary debate of this campaign season. While it's the first debate here in Texas this campaign season, it is not the first time these candidates have been making their way to the Lone Star State. Many of them have been making the rounds, trying to earn votes in a state Democrats think is more in play than ever this election cycle. Here is a look at who will be taking the stage tonight. Frontrunners Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren will all be front and center. Tonight also marks the first time Biden and Warren will share the debate stage. The two Texans in the race also making the cut, Beto O'Rourke and Julian Castro, trying to have some standout moments in this home state debate. The debate is set for 3 hours tonight, so expect a host of issues to be discussed during those 3 hours. One of those likely climate change. The candidates have been pushing their proposals for how they want to combat climate change. And with the debate here in Houston, with residents still recovering from Hurricane Harvey, a lot of people wanting to hear what the candidates have to say about this very issue. We want to bring in our Catherine Giese now, who is at a Democratic watch party here in Houston. Kat, I know you spoke with some people who are still recovering from Hurricane Harvey. What did they tell you?
Yeah, Karina, we're talking belongings still in cardboard boxes. I visited an area of Houston today called Trinity Gardens. This neighborhood was hit uniquely hard by Hurricane Harvey, and now 2 years later, recovery is still ongoing. A weather event so significant.
It was horrific. That was so much water.
It displaced Ruby Banks from her home for 9 months.
This was the room that was gutted out completely.
Now, 2 years after Hurricane Harvey wreaked havoc on the Texas coast and Houston, Banks still has pieces of her life in boxes.
Did the mold inspection and had me clean everything out. Threw away a lot of stuff. Sold some stuff.
Banks has lived in this Trinity Gardens house for 40 years, a gift from her late mother. She says while aspects of the neighborhood have remained the same, the weather has not. Environmental activists say Banks is right.
We're seeing more flooding happening that's way more intense than it's ever been before. Wildfires are happening across the country. Hurricanes are becoming more intense. We just saw that with Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas.
Banks continues to rebuild her life after Harvey, slowly but surely.
And I've heard that FEMA has received more money, but nothing.
Nothing to you.
Nothing to me.
She says while she's skeptical politicians on the debate stage can resolve flooding in her neighborhood, she's grateful her mother's house
I'm definitely blessed.
is still standing.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, scientists say that there may be a climate change connection to hurricanes like Harvey. Now, the science on that is still being debated, and as we're going to hear very shortly, the 10 candidates taking the debate stage each have their own ideas on how to combat climate change, whether that's working towards 100% clean emissions, re-signing on to that Paris Climate Accord, or limiting drilling and fracking. We'll have to keep you posted on who says what, but Juarez says that what he's going to be listening out for very closely is a candidate that says they're ready to take day one action on climate change. Karina?
Catherine, thank you very much. I know an issue a lot of people will be watching for tonight. Other issues likely to take center stage during tonight's debate, gun violence in the wake of several mass shootings across the country, including here in Texas, 2 of them here in Texas, in El Paso and Odessa. We will have more on that a little bit later in the program. Also, healthcare. A lot of the candidates will be hitting what their plans are for healthcare and reforming the healthcare system. And of course, immigration, with Texas on the front lines of the immigration debate. Expect a lot of conversation on that during tonight's 3-hour debate. Texas, as mentioned, has received earlier than usual attention from the 10 Democratic candidates taking the stage tonight, and Texas Democrats are ramping up their efforts to try to win Texas and try to turn Texas blue after gains made in 2018. We caught up with the chairman of the Texas Democratic Party a little bit earlier today. Here's what he had to say. Chairman Hinojosa, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
First off, I know you guys announced, the Texas Democratic Party announced a big plan to try to win back Texas with registering 2.6 million non-registered voters, sending out field organizers. Talk to me about how ambitious this is and how effective you think it'll be.
Well, it is ambitious. It's something we've never done before, but it's something we feel that we need to do in order to turn Texas blue. We believe that, with the margins that we had in 2018 during a midterm election, albeit a high turnout midterm election, 2020 is an election year where we can make significant gains because it's going to be much higher turnout than you had before. Our challenge is to get our voters to go out, and there's a lot of voters or people who are potentially voters that are Democratic voters that we need to register, particularly Hispanics. And so part of the effort is to increase our turnout among the constituencies of the Democratic Party, which are Hispanics. The registration program that we're going to embark in is an effort to at least register between 500,000 to 750,000 voters that are Latino voters.
The debate obviously being held here on Texas Southern University campus. A lot of talk about mobilizing young voters, but also voters of color. What about the significance of having it here on the TSU campus?
Well, it's a recognition by the national party that Texas is a battleground state. Not only is it a battleground state, it is the largest battleground state in the country. I mean, this is the third debate, but really the most important debate, because this is the first time that we're having all 10 candidates on one stage, on one night, to be able to debate each other in front of the American public. And so the party's decision to have that at a historically black university like Texas Southern and in the state of Texas is a recognition of how important these constituencies and Texas are to the Democratic Party and the future success of the party. So we're hoping that this again will further energize Texas Democrats, and they're pretty energized as it is right now.
Sure, we've seen that. We saw that in 2018. I know you guys are pushing it in 2020, but Republicans aren't going away.
No,
and we've heard from, the Harris County GOP as well, really trying to mobilize efforts because of what they've seen over the last couple of years. But Texas still went to Trump in 2016. So how do you, maneuver and make waves and the groundwork to change that?
Well, it's already showing. I mean, the latest poll that has come out, and we've had like 5 successive polls, show Trump losing Texas to a generic Democrat. So that's never happened before in my 35 years of Democratic Party politics. I mean, even when Texas was controlled by Democrats on presidential elections, we rarely ever even got close. This polling, which is consistent with all the prior polling, shows us winning the state of Texas in the presidential election against Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump has got the 41% approval rating, which is the lowest of any battleground state in the country. And Mr. Cornyn, who is on the ballot, has got, we've had about 3 successive polls that also have showed him polling between 25 and 35% approval rating, even lower than Mr. Trump, lower than Mr. Cruz. And so he's in jeopardy of losing his election. We believe that any one of our Democrats can beat him. In fact, the latest poll also shows that Mr. Cornyn is tied with a generic Democrat that would be on the ballot in 2020. So we think this is really achievable. It's a product of where people are today in America and in the state of Texas. They're tired of what they've seen with his administration, and they're energized, they're angry, and they want things to change.
I think the biggest question there is we saw polls in 2016, though, and kind of how that all turned out. So how much emphasis can you place in polls, especially this early on?
Well, polls in Texas did not show us getting within single digits in the presidential election, and we did. Polls in Texas did not show us in 2016 of winning all the big urban counties, but we did.
With regards to the Democratic candidates, the 10 that'll take the stage, I mean the others that are running right now, in terms of nominating a nominee for this at the end of the day, how much concern or just you're looking at in terms of a more progressive candidate versus a more moderate candidate, and how Texans would feel with whichever one comes forward and how you get the voters to vote for that person?
I think the position that of all 10 candidates on all the issues that are important to families is consistent with where Americans are at today. Americans want affordable access to health care in America. They want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to be able to send their kids to a doctor, to a specialist, or to a hospital if they need to, without regard to their ability to pay for that. I think, all 10 of them believe in that principle. There's different variations of how you get there, but their positions are consistent with where the American public is at. All 10 of the folks that are running for president want a better and a bigger commitment to public education to ensure that our kids have a quality education so that they can have a better future. They all want affordable college education for our kids as well. The Democratic Party, no matter which one of those 10 candidates you talk to, their position is more consistent with American voters than any Republican, including Mr. Trump, is right now on any one of those issues. So we're not really worried which candidate gets the nomination, because we believe that their position will ultimately reflect the position of American families today on all these issues.
And tonight's debate is being held on Texas Southern University campus. It's the second largest historically black university in the country. And as Democrats look to win over young voters and voters of color, we spoke with several students on campus to hear what they want to hear from the candidates tonight.
From the candidates, I'm hoping to hear their plan on gun violence, police brutality, HBCU funding, increasing the academic curriculum for student debt, student loan.
Of course, we're on a college campus, so I think a lot of people are going to be, Bernie Sanders and the free school and all that. That's really important to them. And also, this is a campus with a lot of minorities, so, immigration issues are really going to be pushed here, and they're going to want to be heard from.
My main two topics that I'm ready to hear from candidates is one about education, truly just hear their plans on how they're going to help certain students eliminate their student loan debts, what they're going to do about that. Also hear about HBCU funding for historically black colleges around the country. And the second thing also about their policies on criminal justice system and prison reform.
Honesty, transparency. I want to say students really want to hear genuineness, I guess you could say, like the genuity of the candidate and just rigor and grit. How determined are you to fight for me? I want to hear that from you. I want you to communicate that to me, non-verbally and verbally.
And all of the students that we spoke with very excited that the debate is happening on their campus. And all of those students that you just heard from are attending tonight's debate in person. Coming up next on Capitol Tonight, live here in Houston, we're hearing from our political analysts and what they're watching for in tonight's debate. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Capitol Tonight. We are live here in Houston. We're just blocks away. The third Democratic primary debate is getting underway, and we want to bring in our political analysts now to get their take on what they're wanting to hear from the candidates tonight, what they're watching for. Democrat Harold Cook and Republican Ted DeLisi joining us now from back in Austin. Good to see you both.
Hey.
Thanks for being on with us. Harold, yeah, good to see you guys. Debate getting underway right now. Harold, I wanted to start with you because a big thing a lot of people are watching for is that this will be the first time Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren take the stage. How do you think those dynamics will play out?
I think that may be the most interesting thing about tonight for a couple of reasons. Number one, Warren has had all these plans but never really sent them anywhere, and the person to send them to challenge would be Biden. Biden, for his part, he on one hand ought to be somewhat comfortable with his lead, but on the other hand, she's been chipping away at it for weeks and weeks and weeks. and she is sneaking up on him. And it would not surprise me in the slightest if Biden, for the first time really, got kind of sharp elbows of his own pointed in her direction to try to stop the slow bleeding.
Ted, I know from a Republican standpoint, you're just hoping that they're all going after each other and trying to make Republicans look better. But in terms of the Biden-Warren matchup, what, as a Republican, are you watching for there and with the other candidates?
I think that Warren, and I've said this before, I think Warren is running the most intellectually inspired race for the Democratic nomination. I think she's setting the pace, talking about climate change, talking about taking the wood to Amazon and Facebook and Google on privacy. And I think that this is, I think her other Democratic hopefuls want to see themselves as thought leaders in this space. They haven't yet. I think Biden's kind of resting on his laurels. So I'm kind of expecting, kind of wondering for that kind of progressive wing of the party, that part of the party that Beto O'Rourke hopes to represent, that Warren could see herself in the crosshairs a little bit tonight, Harold.
Yeah, Ted, I want to ask you about this. We heard from the chairman of the Democratic Party, Texas Democratic Party, a little bit earlier in the show, but all eyes on Houston, obviously a political hotbed, diverse, competitive races. Democrats really seeing Houston as a way to turn Texas blue and kind of the key to turning Texas blue. How do Republicans counter that?
I think the Republicans counter it with kind of, gobs and gobs of truth. I saw that the Democratic Party chair talked about the fact that there were generic polls with Trump against a generic Democrat or Cornyn against a generic Democrat. And so, that's actually not the way elections really work. Cornyn will run against someone, Trump will run against someone, and there's going to be kind of a spirited debate. Now, there's no question in my mind that Houston and Harris County is this enormous vote trove for both parties. So you've got to compete in Harris County, in Houston, for as many votes as you can possibly get. But Texas's new competitive landscape is that the urban areas, Dallas, Austin, and Houston, are pretty reliably Democratic, and it's those areas right outside, and rural Texas remains reliably Republican, so it's this kind of suburban and ex-urban areas that have become the true battleground for the state, and it's those places that I think that both campaigns are going to have to really, both parties and both campaigns are going to have to compete on if we're going to have a competitive state. And I don't believe that Texas is truly a toss-up state yet. It is a lean Republican state, and the Democrats kind of have to show that they can build on the momentum of 2018, and I think they're going to have some real challenges in that.
Right. Well, Harold, I'll let you respond to that, but just the push to make gains this time around. Obviously, we heard from the chairman and talked on the show about what the Democrats are doing this time around to try and get 2.6 million more people registered. But what about making these gains and continuing on?
Well, look, the Republicans have been losing ground for a while, and that's just a fact in Texas. And the only question remains, how much more ground will they lose in the next election? And I think it's entirely possible that they could lose a lot. Now, whether it's enough for a Democrat to carry Texas is anybody's guess at this point. But I will say this, we've got a very, very unpopular president, and there's no sign that he's going to get any more popular. And if the Democrats are successful, both in Texas and elsewhere, in making this a referendum about Trump, then he's going to be losing in a lot of places, and it could very well include Texas. Now, the difference is there's going to be money coming into Texas this time, which is new. It hasn't happened in a generation. So there are people outside of the state who believe that this is real estate worth fighting over and investing in.
Lastly, I want to get both of your takes. Harold, I'll start with you on this one, but just on the issues. We've heard a lot in the last two debates about immigration, healthcare, guns. What are you wanting to hear and hoping to hear, especially with this debate here in Houston tonight?
I think we should hear a lot about climate change. I would love to hear more about that, especially in Texas where we are tonight. I want to hear a lot more about gun violence and things that should and ought to be done to curb that.
Ted?
It wouldn't surprise me. They're in Houston, the epicenter of the petrochemical economy and something that has been an economic piston for our state and for the country for decades. So now I'm interested in the Democrats coming to Houston, talking to all of those blue-collar workers in the Ship Channel and in Southeast Texas and saying what are their plans to eliminate a carbon-based economy and what that would look like. That's going to have enormous impact for a state like Texas, but not just a state like Texas, for a region and a town that they're in tonight.
Guys, I know you're going to be sticking around. We'll be back live at 11 and we'll get all of your input and analysis on how all of this 3-hour debate went. A lot to talk about at 11. We'll see you back there then. Thanks so much for being on with us right now.
See you soon.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to Capitol Tonight. Governor Greg Abbott unveiling his suggestions to lawmakers on ways to reduce gun violence. Abbott signaling today he won't push for mandatory background checks in private gun sales in the wake of 2 mass shootings in the state that left 29 people dead. It's something the lieutenant governor has been pushing, favoring background checks for stranger-to-stranger sales, even after the National Rifle Association pushed back against it. Abbott instead wants lawmakers to consider ways of making voluntary checks easier for private sellers. Gun control groups and some Democrats have called the governor's response insufficient. And the governor tweeting simply good today after a grand jury indicted the suspected El Paso gunman on capital murder charges. A 21-year-old is accused of carrying out the August 3rd shooting at a busy Walmart that killed 22 people and injured dozens of others. Authorities say shortly after the shooting, he confessed to targeting Mexicans and believe he posted a racist anti-immigrant manifesto online shortly before opening fire. Federal authorities plan to bring separate capital murder charges against the suspect. The Department of Justice is investigating the case as an act of domestic terrorism and as a hate crime. That is going to do it for us right now, but be sure to join us again at 11 o'clock for all of the post-debate coverage. We will have analysis, interviews, and reaction to everything that's happening right now in the 3-hour Democratic primary debate taking place here in Houston. Be sure to join us again tonight at 11. Until then, we'll see you back here at 11. Until then, thanks for watching.